You might not think there's a whole lot to talk about analytically in regards to Pokemon's opening and ending themes, but once again, Sun and Moon proves that it has gone above and beyond with every aspect of its production by giving me my new favorite song from the series, Type Wild by Shoko Nakagawa. If you haven't watched the series in Japanese until recent generations, then you might be surprised to learn that the Type Wild you hear in Sun and Moon is actually a cover, with the original version having aired as the ending theme for the back end of the Indigo League series and about half of the Orange Islands, and was originally performed by Ash's voice actress, Rika Matsumoto. This isn't the first time that Pokemon has done covers for their theme songs, but Nakagawa's cover of Type Wild really stuck out to me not just as a great song, but also in how it improves on the original in ways that make it feel much more thematically cohesive with the series as a whole. Matsumoto's rendition, while still good, is nothing special. It's got that 90s pop rock sound, and it feels really cheesy in a lot of its sound choices, though I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a negative in this case. Nakagawa's version is another beast entirely with how explosive it is. While Matsumoto's version has a fairly consistent flow and tempered dynamic range as it moves from phrase to phrase, Nakagawa's version is much more bombastic and excitable, with a lot of moments that seem to burst out and break away from the flow of each phrase as the core instruments drop out entirely to make these sections more pronounced, as if the song's excitement simply cannot be contained by its structure. This is further reflected in the song's instrumentation. Whereas Matsumoto's version has very little flair outside of a few harmonica parts, Nakagawa's has as many bells and whistles attached as possible. Blasting synth trumpets, reverberating tubular bells, 8-bit sections that sample some of the memorable tracks from the video games. This song is packed with as many musical flourishes as possible to give it this grand and momentous feeling. It even modulates briefly after the second chorus before returning to the original key, again conveying this feeling of uncontrollable excitement. I bring all of this up because, in the context of the Pokemon series itself, Nakagawa's Type Wild is vastly more interesting in regards to the tone and ideas it's trying to convey. Tonally speaking, Sun and Moon is far and away the funnest and most excitable Pokemon series to date, both visually and narratively. It has fully embraced the pure glee and joy of living in the Pokemon world and interacting with the Pokemon and people in it, and having that reflected in the music further elevates this feeling. Pretty much every OP and ED for Sun and Moon has done this in some manner, but I feel that Type Wild has been the most successful at conveying this sentiment. My favorite example of this can be found in the song's vocal elements. While there are some nice flourishes in Nakagawa's version, like her emphatic exclamations before the first two chorus sections, and the moments in the last chorus where she's practically shouting with excitement rather than singing, playing up a more youthful and joyous tone, it's in the overall structure of the vocal parts and the meta elements behind those parts that we see the biggest differences. In Matsumoto's version, Matsumoto is the only vocal part, and since she is Ash's voice actress, this conveys the notion that it is Ash singing the lyrics, especially considering that she uses her Ash voice for the song. In contrast, Sun and Moon's version is sung by Shoko Nakagawa, someone who has done extensive work for the Pokemon franchise, both in terms of music and voice acting, having played nearly a dozen different major and minor characters. Hell, she even did key animation for Sun and Moon. Nakagawa has stated in the past that Pokemon is an important franchise to her, having played the original games as a child, and that she has wanted to give back to the franchise as much as she could. So having her do a cover of a song originally performed by Ash's voice actress comes off as a sort of passing of the torch. The people people who grew up playing Pokemon are now the ones in charge of making it and spreading its message to others who will resonate with it. Nakagawa's version also contains several group vocal sections, often as responses to her own vocals. This, for me, is what truly elevates this song to thematic brilliance. Unlike how Matsumoto's version is just her singing as Ash, Nakagawa's version is her singing along with others, the voices of many different Pokemon trainers singing out to the audience. This also draws direct parallels to the different anime series that these songs are attached to. Matsumoto's version comes very early in Ash's journey. While he has learned a bit about appreciating those around him, he is still very much caught up in his own world, and so this version only contains his voice. In contrast, Sun and Moon Ash is the most worldly and mature that he's been in the series so far. He's someone who can fully appreciate the Pokemon world around him and how it all interconnects into a larger ecosystem and community, and so the voices of that community are represented in this song. It's also interesting that both versions play over different Pokemon leagues, and thus reflect the tones of said leagues. The Indigo League, while exciting, ultimately ends in defeat for Ash, and so the song is much more subdued in its approach. The Alola League, however, ends with Ash's first league victory after years and years of struggle, and so the boundless and rampaging joy and vibrance that Nakagawa's version exudes matches the sheer elation of this crowning achievement for Ash's career as a Pokemon trainer. Furthermore, the narrative also draws much more attention to characters besides Ash in Sun and Moon. While the original series occasionally does this, it's still very much the Ash show for the vast majority of episodes. Sun and Moon, meanwhile, has entire arcs dedicated to the characters Ash surrounds himself with, and as a result produces the most complex and well-realized supporting cast the series has seen thus far, and this is reflected in the group vocals of Nakagawa's Type Wild. Yes, Pokemon is about Ash's journey, but it's also about the world of Pokemon at large and how Ash interacts with the people and Pokemon in that wider world. And so embodying that concept musically is what makes this version of Type Wild my favorite Pokemon theme of all time. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rourke Tenjoin, Christine Seibert, Ryan Johnson, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.